Hey folks, it's Swank Ivy. It's great to see all you beautiful people watching another one of my videos. Thanks so much for some of the comments you folks left on my last video where I said that, I was feeling sick and stuff. I really appreciate that people asked about it and made comments about their well wishes. I really do appreciate that you guys will do that. I'm feeling a little better now, but still don't really know what the medical mystery is with me, so I don't know. So I'm doing Letters to an Asexual, and this is number 48. So I'm gonna take some comments that were left on a video just this week, and I usually don't do that because I have so many old messages that I can use in videos, but this basically just happened and it's so easy to access, and I feel a little chatty about this subject since it just happened, so I will go into it. There was a person who commented on one of my more recent videos that dealt with whether asexuality is a disorder, and this person said a bunch of really strange, disjointed things in the comments, and clearly believed that he was saying things that were backed by some kind of scientific investigation or something, but he asked some unclear and leading questions that basically made it very clear what bias he was dealing with. And so first I'm going to read you the comment that he left. So here's what he wrote. Asexuality is a choice. So we're off to a great start there. Asexuality is a choice because we are all attracted to people, but there are some who just are not that much into sex, which means they choose not to have sex. That is a choice, but as a disorder, I'm not sure it's quite possible. They may have some sort of problem with the brain. Maybe their dopamines just don't work properly. Their dopamines. So they just don't enjoy pleasure. Who knows why? But as someone who has studied the topic of asexuality in a class in college, I'd have to say it's a choice. I have heard arguments that some asexual people are just homosexuals in the closet. I personally don't believe that is true for all asexuals. However, some asexuals are just homosexuals. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 40% to 50% of asexuals are possibly homosexual, but the majority of asexuals are not gay per se. They just choose to live that way as an asexual. Times are tough, and I think most asexuals are just scared to settle down to raise a family and to get married. It's hard to raise a family. In fact, most people aren't getting married as much as they used to. This is a fact. A lot of people hate kids as well, and they feel they're being forced to have kids by being pressured by friends, family, and society. I think some asexual women may choose to live as asexual because they don't want kids and don't want to be forced to have kids to impress their family. There are a lot more women than men who are asexual, and I honestly believe it has to do with the fact that women just simply don't enjoy sex as men do. As far as a cure goes, well, it depends on the choice asexuals make. Do they want to continue living as an asexual, or do they want to change and become a homosexual or heterosexual? It's up to them. It's their choice if they want to be asexual or not. So if there was a cure for asexuality and someone decided to stay asexual, then yes, it's a choice. I would like to ask a real asexual, if there was a cure for asexuality and you could choose to be asexual or heterosexual, would you choose to stay being asexual? If so, it's a choice. How conclusive. How impressive. So, what's really amazing about that disorganized and poorly educated opinion and ramble there is how many just flat out misconceptions about asexuality this person has. Like, he said that he studied asexuality in a college class, but he clearly doesn't even know what it is. Like, he conflated it with aromanticism and with partner desiring, because he seemed to think that asexual people won't get married, won't have kids, won't be in relationships, and are engaging in fear-based behaviors. And of course, he also conflated it with celibacy. He assumed that we all abstain from sex. And I mean, if you know what asexuality is, you know that the very first statement he made, we're all attracted to people, that's basically like the crux of why he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Because he seems to believe it's a set of behaviors, of abstentions that we're engaging in. And that's not what asexuality is. Not at all. Obviously some people who are asexual prefer to use a definition that, may refer more to their abstention from sex than from their attraction experiences. That's their prerogative. But that is not what asexuality necessarily means, and it certainly doesn't represent the entire asexual population, or probably even the majority of the people who are describing themselves as asexual. He's making an awful lot of assumptions there, and he packed so many misconceptions and misunderstandings about what asexuality is into his assumptions that he then piled on top of that it was just like baffling to read through it. And not that it necessarily reflects on anybody's being right or wrong, but there were like a ton of spelling errors and punctuation problems and sentences that had the wrong construction to them to make grammatical sense. And that annoys me more when someone tries to suggest that they're more educated about something. Because, if you're going to harp on your education, if you're going to try to pull rank on someone, then, you have to make a convincing case for seeming really professional. And those things would not, wouldn't fly in a college paper if they graded on spelling. You know what I mean? Like, just, it's amazing to me that he later in this conversation, as you will see, tried to pull rank on me. So let me go on. And now this is how I responded to that, okay? This was my first response in the YouTube comment, and I said this: everyone has choices they can make in association with their sexual interests. They can act on them, not act on them, change their mind over time, sure. That doesn't mean the feelings they have are therefore a choice. You're being unnecessarily reductive with your understanding of this, and you should really stop making assumptions about their motivations. It is not your business to decide independently from outside their experience. Oh, my oven went off. I'm cooking some spring rolls. Give me just a second. Right, where was I? Alright. So, it is not your business to decide independently from outside their experience that actually they're just scared of commitment. That's an extremely judgmental attitude you have there. Furthermore, another pointlessly reductive thing you said is that being asexual is a choice if someone would choose to be asexual given other choices. A, there is not a cure or a way to change someone's sexuality, so hypothetical situations do not determine reality. And B, gay people who are proud of who they are and wouldn't choose to change themselves have not therefore proved that being gay is a choice. It's interesting that you wouldn't apply that thought process to being straight, also. If you can hypothetically reduce sexuality to a choice by saying they're choosing an alternative if they wouldn't choose to be straight, it works the other way too. I recommend you listen to the real, lived experience of asexual people when trying to understand them, instead of applying assumptions you made after hearing asexuality exists in a college class. Now, when you hear how he responds to this, you will be, well, you probably won't be surprised. This is a Letters to an Asexual video in the 40s, so, I mean, you know that it's going to be unreasonable, but... So this is how he responded to that comment. funny how you get all mad and extremely rude over this when it was a simple question to ask. Hypothetically, if there was a cure for asexuality, would you choose to stay asexual or choose to be cured of it? Well, as a heterosexual man, if there was a cure to change me from heterosexual to gay, I would decline. So yes, I guess being heterosexual would be my choice. Okay, I have to interrupt the comment for a second. That was the only thing he said that kind of surprised me. I feel like he probably doesn't even realize that he agreed that sexuality is a choice for straight people too, because usually they don't use that terminology for their own choice. You know, they see theirs as the default and everyone else's as a choice that's deviating from that. So it is very weird to see somebody perceive their, you know, being a straight guy as like, oh yes, well I would choose that. But like, he had such a disorganized way of approaching it that I don't even know if he realizes what he said. Anyway, so if there was a cure for asexuality, would you take it? If not, you're proving it's a choice. I bet you won't even answer because you're the kind of person who hates to be wrong. And by the way, honey, I'm speaking with years of experience in human sexuality, unlike you. I've studied asexuality, and I have come to the conclusion that it's a choice. Not only based off of statistics, but also from taking with, I'm assuming he means talking with, multiple asexuals on the issue. I imagine that he would probably characterize our conversation as having proved he was right too. Now, that was the end of the first comment that he made in response. He also followed up 3 more times after this to continue posting and posting on my video, ranting with these one-sentence rant things that just it made me think, like, he's sputtering, he's so angry that I've been so rude, and he seems to have no concept of how incredibly awful his first comment was. Like, to come onto somebody's video and basically say, excuse me, your life is a lie, how is that offensive? You know, like, plus, you know, most people who watch my videos have pointed out that I'm very patient with people and that I give them more of my time and more of my understanding than I should. I think it would be pretty clear if you read his comment and then you read my comment, that I was not being rude to him at all. Like, I told him he was wrong, but like, I guess that in itself is extremely rude and makes me angry. You know, makes me an angry person for defending the existence of my orientation against bullshit comments like this. He wrote the longer one that I just read, but then he came back with 3 more, and I was actually just responding to the first one. So when I give you guys my response, it's really just to the first thing he said. But, you know, when I refreshed the page, I found 3 more comments from him that he just devolved. So here's the first one, the first additional comment. And he wrote, also, yes, most asexuals fear being in relationships or enjoy being single. I was single for over 7 years and loved it. So maybe you're just confusing enjoying the single life with asexuality, and you can't lie that a large portion of asexuals fear having kids. They get kind of repulsed by it. And then the next comment says, and Swank Ivy, if you can't challenge an argument with reason or logic, don't start an argument and pick fights when you know you're wrong. Dude, you picked a fight with me. I didn't start this conversation. Like, how am I not challenging the argument with logic and reason by basically saying, well, this is everything that's very wrong with what you said. And his last comment to me, which is unbelievable, he said, "You're just a bully, Swank Ivy, and a troll." I'm a bully because I responded to someone who came onto my video and, told me that I'm choosing to be disordered and probably hiding that I'm gay. Or at least half the time people like me are hiding that we're gay because we can't admit that we're asexual. It's all about being afraid of relationships, which isn't even what asexuality is. So my response covers most of what I would have to say to these things. Here's my reply. Projection is a rough thing, my man. The simple act of disagreeing with you has you characterizing me as a rude, angry person, I'm sure, but you'll notice my response is pretty civil, considering your whole purpose in posting on my video was to invalidate my experience and recharacterize it as something else. You should think about what you would do if someone did that to you. If you can even imagine being in a situation where your life seems bizarre and other to most people you meet. I'm not mad and extremely rude because I tell you you should stop telling us, the people experiencing it, that we're actually afraid of getting married and half of us are refusing to admit we're gay. And that's what's really wrong with us. With any demonstrated satisfaction on our part as evidence that we're making an artificial choice. Most asexuals are just scared to settle down and raise a family and get married. Really? The idea that we are somehow proving our orientation is a choice if we are satisfied with how we are is an embarrassingly awful demonstration of your misconceptions. Hypothetical gotchas are terrible logic, and your reliance upon them makes it clear where your bias is. People who are basing their understanding of a subject on reason and research do not make arguments like, "Answer this laughable question," for which your available answers will either invalidate asexuality as a choice or express false dissatisfaction with your life, ultimately painting an unflattering picture of your orientation no matter how you answer. Condescending to me with pet names, honey, regarding your supposed research and oh-so-logical conclusions is pretty embarrassing for you, too. It's a common strategy for people who know they're out of their league or feel that they must lash out to address their opponent with diminutives as a shortcut to invalidating them, but anyone looking at this conversation can see why you need to resort to such underhanded conversation tactics. For the record, I'm a multiply published author on the subject of asexuality, and more than a dozen human sexuality researchers contributed to and supported my book on their platform. So in addition to my lived experience, I think the evidence is clear who has an informed opinion on this subject. You should really do some thinking about why you are invested enough in this subject to follow me around on my videos, trying to drag support for your heteronormative perspectives out of me. My connection with this material is obviously appropriate since it's part of my life, but you lose nothing if you just listen to people and sit down when they're trying to educate you about something outside your experience. Your gross, ham-fisted attempts at twisting people's arms into agreeing with your poorly reasoned opinion, along with your terrible and unsuccessful attempt to pull rank, makes it clear that you're not actually here to learn anything from people who are in a position to know. You're muscling in on people from a marginalized orientation and grinningly assigning yourself a win preemptively based on how you think we should or would answer your bizarre, disorganized question. But we've been through this enough times to know you're not really asking a question. You're searching for confirmation of a worldview that ultimately approaches sexual diversity from a perspective that sorts non-mainstream orientations into disordered pockets that you can either then cure or shame for not seeing themselves as diseased. You're saying all the same things plenty of ignorant people have said before, and I know exactly how the next few things you will say will sound too, so I don't see the point in wasting words on someone who doesn't want to learn. I'm ending this here. And I blocked the guy. And, I guess to his credit, I hesitate to say, he didn't make another account to continue the conversation, because usually people that are like that can't let it lie. He had already demonstrated that he had to keep coming back to say one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. ultimately coming to the conclusion that I was bullying him when he started the conversation, basically to tell me I'm wrong about everything I'm experiencing, and, you know, recharacterizing everything about asexuality as something that isn't even asexuality. So it's kind of awful that there are so many people out there who come from this perspective thinking that they're educated on a subject. Oh, my spring rolls need to be turned. I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. Where was I? So anyway, these people think that they're coming from an informed place. They think that they're being logical. They think that they're informed. They think that because maybe they took a class that mentioned it, or they read, you know, some article on the internet about it, that means not only are they informed about it on every level that they need to be to make a judgment, but that whatever conclusions they come to in their supposed exploration of it, which is always bigoted, biased, and cursory, that they've proved something. And I mean, did you hear how one of his comments said that he studied this extensively and he came to the conclusion that it's a choice? Well, wow, you really proved something there. Like, what did you do? What was your methodology? What kind of proof are you talking about? It's very frustrating to talk to people who think they're being logical, but that was an emotional response if I've ever seen one. And they never want to admit that. They never want to admit that they're very angry about it if someone claims that they don't know what they're talking about, tells them they're wrong, or suggests that they have more to learn. And bottom line is, if you're talking to someone who has a different experience from you, you're not there to tell them how they should be thinking about their subjective experience of the world. Asexuality is not a thing that you prove. It's not a thing that you quantitatively analyze as to whether it exists or what it actually is. It's not a human experience that you can put on a gram scale and figure out how much it weighs. So when people claim to have figured it out or come to a conclusion about it, but all of their research about it is saying asshole things in YouTube comments, like, you know, I mean, I don't know what he did, what he thinks he did, but, you know, considering the quality of his understanding of what asexuality is, like, he obviously doesn't even know what it is. So it's very easy for me to dismiss what he said. But he's not allowed to dismiss what I say about it because it is my experience. It is how I identify. So I can tell you a few things about what that means to me. And if you're not one of the people who uses that label to describe yourself, and you're not using the terms the same way that the rest of the community is, then you don't get to judge that community by the standards that you basically just pulled out of your butt. So, anyway, I imagine that this fellow probably withdrew from this conversation irritated that he couldn't talk to me anymore, but probably just kind of gave up. The spring rolls are ready to come out. I'm going to end this after I just say what I think probably happened. He probably just decided I wasn't worth it, but came away from the conversation unchanged in his opinion about what asexuality is and who counts as asexual, whether it's a disorder or whether we're secretly gay. And it's like, he doesn't even acknowledge that some people are gay and asexual, or, you know, that there are so many different identities on the spectrum of asexuality, that there are so many people who may have sex in relationships or may have relationships, may have children. I know asexual parents. So, like, just, it's baffling that he tried to pull rank on me about like who's informed on the subject. But those kinds of people are, I mean, they're very easy to see through, but they're very hard to deal with. And unfortunately, these science bro types, they're everywhere. And asexual people, like, this is kind of the equivalent that we deal with as, sometimes trans people have to deal with, these folks who say, well, biology says there are only two genders, and someone who's like a non-binary trans person might say, well, excuse me, that's not how I identify, so, and they'll be like, no, 6th grade biology says that there are two very distinct categories, and actual biologists who study it, sociologists, people who are on, somewhere not in one of the binary categories of gender on that spectrum, they can all tell that person something that they can learn about biology, about sexuality, about sex and gender, but they don't want to listen. They're very, very stuck on this idea that there are very narrowly defined categories of how people can be. And, I just don't actually know why it's so hard for them to break out of this idea that they already know everything that they need to know. Because, real scientists are so curious. Real scientists are very interested in learning about different perspectives. And I mean, I'm not going to say there aren't real scientists who are good at their job who aren't pig-headed. There's plenty of them. But, these science bros who, like, they're not even really scientists, but they think they are, and they're in our everyday life just telling us these things that, especially if it's someone who's close to you or someone who has power over you in some way, those attitudes can really mess up your life, especially if they are able to affect you during a formative time of your life. So these are things people really need to be more informed on, more educated on, and they certainly shouldn't be swinging around YouTube telling me that, unlike them, I'm not educated about my own orientation. So I'm going to end there and eat some spring rolls. How about that? See you guys next time.